When Solomon dies, his son Rehoboam goes to Shechem to be made king over all of Israel. When he did, a group of individuals led by Jeroboam, who had opposed Solomon during his reign as being too harsh, came to Rehoboam and said, your dad was cruel, your dad was mean, your dad used forced labor and high taxes. If you will just lighten the load, we will be happy for you to be king over us. Now, if Rehoboam has an ounce of political savvy, he looks back at them and says, oh, absolutely, dad was crazy. I'm going to be, even if he didn't mean it, if he's going to be at all political, oh, absolutely, it'll be a lot different under me. It'll be nice. Everybody will have a good time. He doesn't say that. He says, go away for 3 days and I'll give you my answer when you come back. So they leave, and he seeks some advice. He turns to the older men who had advised his father. He says, what do you think I should say to these people who say dad was too cruel? And the older advisors say, oh, look, they were right. Look, just tell them, speak kindly to them, and they will be your servants forever. Just tell them what they want to hear, and they will be your servants forever. But he didn't like that advice. It didn't seem macho or manly enough. And so he talked to the men who'd grown up with him as advisors and said, what do you guys think I should say, these young men? And they said, you go back and you tell them that they ain't seen nothing yet. You go out there and tell them that dad used whips and I'll use scorpions. You go ahead and tell them that and they actually used a sexual innuendo when talking about how he should talk about himself. He luckily left that answer out when he was talking to the people. The people come back. He doesn't choose the older men. He chooses the younger men's advice, and he says to them, dad brought whips with you. I'm going to bring scorpions. You ain't seen nothing yet. And the people decided, you know what? We don't have to follow you then. If that's the kind of king you're going to be, we don't need a king like that. And so we have a civil war. We have the nation of Israel, the united monarchy, split into two. We have the southern kingdom, which is led by King Rehoboam. They did keep him as king. And the northern kingdom, which selected King Jeroboam to be king over them. Basically, 10 of the tribes, roughly, joined this northern kingdom, so it was much larger. Naturally, it was more wealthy. They controlled the trade routes, which gave them more revenue. It also exposed them a little more to military invasion, because it turns out armies can use the same roads that merchants can. But they didn't have any stable dynastic tradition. So while the southern kingdom of Judah, which was basically Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, was smaller and poorer and more isolated, they did have a stable dynastic tradition, because you were going to be a child in the line of David if you're going to be king in the southern kingdom. So that was a major advantage to have that. They also held Jerusalem and the temple. So now it was hard enough to get people to commit to worshiping just in Jerusalem when it was one nation. Can you imagine now leaving the country? It was the only place to worship God. You actually had to leave the country to do it. Jeroboam saw this was going to be a problem and decided to take some steps against it. So he set up 2 worship places, one at Dan in the far north of the kingdom, one at Bethel in the far south of the kingdom. And when he does this, he then sets up 2 golden calves. Now let me just say real quick, if you ever have a plan and at any point in your plan you say, you know what we really need? Golden calves. It's a bad plan. Just don't do that, okay? Jeroboam not only makes 1 golden calf, he makes 2 golden calves. Puts one in Dan, one in Bethel, and says, here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, Jeroboam doesn't believe that the golden calves he just made were the things that brought him out of Egypt. He believes Yahweh brought them out of Egypt, but he is using the golden calves to represent Yahweh. So this reminds us of a word that we should have talked about by now when we look at the worship life of Israel. It's interesting because the Bible says that this thing became a sin, which makes me feel like God would have been okay if Jeroboam had built a temple in the north. It's building a temple and using representatives of Baal to commemorate Yahweh that's going to be the problem here. And we're going to see that this syncretism, I gave the word away, this syncretism is going to be a problem for Israel now for the next 300 years in the way in which they practice their religion.